Okay, so I'm going to have to go over this because I have to speak to this specific topic because I know people that do this. Okay, I know them personally and whatever. And so to bring the connection between Loosh energy and the dying and reproducing at the macro level, the whole point of, well, reproduction at the macro level comes from the suffering of a human or an animal at the micro level and then at the macro level. And so I also envision the new world where people are not breeding animals to sell. People are not breeding humans because they think that's part, because that's what, humans are a commodity. They're being used as a commodity. And so why there's so much suffering is because we have so much breeding going on with humans and animals at the macro level that it is contributing to the suffering in our world. The climb upward, like, when kids are trying to adapt to a society, they're going to go through suffering. It's when you're growing, it's suffering. Okay, the growing pains, learning your community, learning what is expected of you, learning how to deal with your parents as well as everybody else in your community. That's a suffering. And so that's why there's so many predators in our world, because we have so many kids that are suffering, and reproduction is suffering because it comes from distress in the body that is going to trigger then the mitigation of extinction, which is then dropping eggs and seeds to then be fertilized and become another human. But if you are breeding animals and you're on the J juice, you are contributing to the suffering, just so you understand this. Okay? You cannot possibly be aligned when it comes to uh, when it comes to harmony and balance. When part of you says, okay, I like the J juice and I want to be balanced and all this other stuff, but you're breeding an animal that is going to have to suffer to be bred because you want to pay your bills. I'm not going to call the person out because it's not my place to, but I want to put it out there that the amount of suffering that we have in our world, the Loosh energy, does come from dying and reproducing at the macro level. On your way out the door, people are suffering, and on their way in the door, people are suffering. Where suffering doesn't exist is when you're able to maintain a relatively even existence. That, yes, you'll have ebb and flow of entropy and negentropy, which is the accumulation and then the release of energy, but it'll be in a balanced way where you're not going to trigger entropy on a mass level, and then that entropy will then emit the suffering. Okay? And so this is why, motherhood comes from suffering. Okay? This is why when you have children, those everything, everything when it starts off and when it ends is a type of suffering. It's a Loosh energy that predators are attracted to. You have to understand this. Okay? And so if you're going to reproduce in our world, you must be able to somehow introduce J juice to your child. You must. Because a suffering child that comes from the distress signals that cause them to be born to begin with will be a suffering adult, and they'll either be a victim or they'll be a predator, one of the two. Or they'll be, simultaneous, they'll interchange based upon who they're attracted to and what they take on as an interest and how they're able to adapt to it. And if they cannot adapt to whatever they're doing, they're going to have some kind of suffering. Okay? But this is something that's important to know when it comes to dying and reproducing, is that suffering is inevitable, and that is the Loosh energy. And so this is why it's so important to understand balancing the biochemistry as a child grows up, so they don't become that imbalanced, Looshful type of suffering energy that they experienced as a child and then be that same kind of energy, but even now more amplified. And that's where like the Unabomber comes in. That's where all the extremists come in, because the amount of suffering they endured as a child, and then it was never corrected. And so then they became then what they were, where they came from. Okay, when you are dying and reproducing at the micro level, when you are dying and reproducing at the micro level, that is where the body is able to regenerate cells, lengthen your telomeres, and then get rid of the excess. And no one would have to know this. This would be your own personal thing. But when you're dying and reproducing at the macro level, just look at all your friends and family. Okay? When women have babies, guess what? That energy that they have in their body is being siphoned off by that baby. And somebody a long time ago, a couple of years ago, a professor was talking about how a baby is like a parasite to the mother. And they got a lot of flack. They got a lot of backlash for even saying that. Well, I'm going to say it, because I already have backlash, so I don't really care. But yes, children are like parasites to their parents. They require a lot of energy, and there's a lot of Loosh energy when it comes to a child, as well as they are growing up. And if that parent has imbalances, they're not going to help that poor child really balance out their emotions, because the parent's emotions are not balanced. And so inevitably they will reinforce the Loosh energy, which will then have a very predictable outcome. Cancer, disease, chronic illness, autoimmunity, and other types of criminal behavior, potentially, relative to the background of that family. And so, and this is also why some mothers have more high-risk pregnancies, because they don't have really what it takes to give everything to that child at the micro level, and so that child comes into this world at a deficit. They're going to have emotions run high here, or not enough emotions here, and then you see the manifestation of the deficits that it had as a child growing up, whether in utero or as well as in that household. It's going to manifest into the world. And that's why there's so much surveillance in our society, because the architects of our society know this. They know how many imbalances are in their community. They've already done all the different experiments. They've already done the surveillance. They kind of can figure out how to profile somebody based upon just where they came from. And then when something isn't corrected, it'll just be amplified later on down the road as they get older. And so this is very important for those that want to get pregnant. Your pregnancy does come from imbalances. That's the very nature of reproduction. The reason why you're reproducing is because there's an imbalance. It's now making a new copy because that one wasn't able to stay at an even level. But when you are in a society that is fluctuating, when you're in an environment that is heavily influenced by so many different things, you will obviously be evolving at the micro level on a constant basis. That is the non-equilibrium lifestyle in ecosystems. You are never going to be at equilibrium. Equilibrium means death, okay? You don't want to be at equilibrium. That means death. But you don't want to have so much suffering and so much evolution happen all at once that then your suffering becomes now part of you. And so this is probably why we have a downfall of our society, why we have a major decline in our society, and why there is like a reset, why there is a depopulation agenda, because we have been bred to think that having babies and dying is the way to be. It's supposed to be. And then people get together, they bond through imbalanced emotions, and then they go and fulfill whatever expectations of their family. They get married, and then now it's like, two different crazy imbalanced people now amplified again, and then they create a child who is just an exact copy of all their different imbalances, and you hope that maybe somebody along the line will correct those balances, but most likely not. So that's why I say, if you're not doing J juice, oh my God, there's going to be a lot of heartache for a person down the road, because our whole society has been exponentially forced to evolve on bodies that are not prepared to do that. And that is the viruses. Okay? So if you are a breeder, If you are breeding animals, if you are breeding humans, that comes from an imbalance, and that does come from suffering. And then breeders, yes, are capitalizing on the suffering of that mother. I'm so happy that my dog was spayed. And this is the thing, my dog, like, she was spayed at the shelter, and I took her on. And I thought maybe, like, before I was thinking about living indefinitely and regrowing all that stuff, I was like, well, she's probably going to, be in heat at some point. She's probably going to, at some point, regrow those ovaries and whatever else that was taken out during that spay procedure. But then, it's like, we were in like the third year, and we're in 2020, and she has not been in heat since and all that, or has not been in heat at all. And I'm like, okay. And I know that where I'm thinking what's happening is that she actually, the body is in such balance that it doesn't need to drop seeds. So she probably regrew whatever, I'm feeling scar tissue kind of coming to the surface on her belly. Not like to the surface, but I could feel the hardness of where she had different operations, where she had a tumor taken out at the shelter, as well as when she was spayed. And I could totally see a difference in her skin and her fur and all of that stuff. She's definitely, a better version of herself than a couple of years ago. But she will not be dropping seeds. She will not be in heat. She will not be trying to attract a male because of imbalances. So that's the whole as above, so below. As above, you are your best copy. You're not going to be dropping loosh energy to attract a mate, and you will be balanced. You'll adapt to your environment. She's adapted. I'll tell you what, I have her so trained that even when like every day, every night, she is like a clockwork. Gets off the bed at a certain time, and wants to go outside. She doesn't really want to be fed. I mean, I feed her, like, I put food in her dish, but when I eat, she's when she eats. And so I give her some of my food, so that's when she eats for the most part. But she has access to food all the time, and she has bones I give her all the time. But she doesn't eat those bones because she knows balance. Her body is so on point, and her emotions. And then when she feels a little dis-ease, like, she's evolving, she'll whine for a minute, for a second, and then she's fine. I mean, she's definitely an emotional dog. She's strictly from her instincts. But she will never go back to, she'll never get to a point where I thought she would get to, would be dropping, eggs or being in heat, because she's the best copy. Now, would I want to get her examined to see whatever was taken out grew back? Well, no. I mean, it doesn't even matter. But she will never be in that suffering point. She'll never be dropping babies. I would never breed her because she couldn't anyways. You could say, yeah, she was spayed, or the fact that she's the best copy, whatever, too. That's as above, so below. You wouldn't know unless you understood her background. Yeah, she was spayed, but she could have regrow all her plumbing, and she could, if she was now on a decline. Let's say well, let's say for whatever reason, I don't know how she would decline. I don't give her J juice all the time, hardly at all. Only when I feel like she's upgrading, then I give her the J juice to support her. But that doesn't happen very often. So the only thing I would say is, I guess, if she went into a household where there was so much new energy, and maybe she would get abused or something, and then the body senses that there is an extinction event coming, and then she would go into heat. And so going into heat in a period is a sign of distress. So you have to understand that going into heat, periods, all of that is a sign of distress. And then breeding is the ultimate distress. Breeding is the ultimate distress. That's when the body knows that it's going into extinction event at some point, and it's going to drop seeds, and they're suffering along with that. So, so if you are breeding animals and you're making money off of that animal because you want to sell puppies, that's capitalizing on an animal suffering. And then if you're in maternity and all this other stuff, and you're a doctor and all that stuff, yeah, you're making money off the suffering of humans too. If you're a vet, you're making money off the animal suffering. I'm telling you, there's so much money in capitalizing on biodiversity suffering. And so this is where I'm going to draw all the connections between reproduction and not getting your period is a sign of the best copy if you're on the J juice. And then if you start dropping seeds and you're getting your period, you're still in that, your body still senses distress, but you keep doing the J juice. At some point, when you reverse all your issues, that period will stop. It's happened for me. I guess I see it in my dog. But then, hey, someone say, well, she was spayed, so of course she's not going to be dropping seeds and being in heat. Well, okay, fine. But it's still as above, so below. So if you don't know a person's background, you really can't determine if that spay is the reason why she's not in heat or is the fact that she's her best copy. You won't know. Okay? So, like I said, this is for this one lady that's new on my Facebook. As above, so below is when you're like two ships passing the night. You could be at some point with two people. One person is a so below, this is a blue pen, one person, the as above, is the green pen, and you could be somewhere right there in the middle, meeting together and having a relatively parallel type of life, but one is going to be evolving and the other one is going to be devolving, and both, if they both have their own belief systems, the devolution is going to be then off to another plane, which is the devolution plane, the death and destruction and the entropy, and the one that is evolving will just stay on this earth and just keep evolving and staying, relatively low key and productive and harmonious. So that's the as above, so below. You could have you can have a dog that's spayed and not dropping any eggs and not getting to heat, and you have a dog that's so healthy, okay, and the dog that's been spayed has so many issues, like she did when I first got her. She was spayed, they took out her plumbing or clipped or something, but she still had issues until I got her on the J juice, and now she's in the above world, but she's not going to be in heat either. Just like with the menopause thing, people are like, "Oh yeah, you're in menopause." No, I'm not in menopause. I'm yeah, it's my, but I'm not really paused. I'm the best copy, so why would I drop seeds? The one little tiny seed that I potentially could drop was so small, and that was like October 31st, and I hadn't had a period since August 15th, and it was just like one day of a tiny little blood, and that was it. It was like a thin line. It wasn't even a gush or anything. So eventually, you're gonna stop your period. That's the as above, so below. But if you didn't know somebody, but if someone's aging and they have menopause, and yeah, their body is set to destroy itself. But if you're young and you don't have menopause, yeah, you can call it, there's another word for it, I forget. Amenorrhea. That's when you never get your period, or you never had your period. Amenorrhea. And when I was asking people a long time ago, when was the latest you had your period? Someone said they got the period at 19, and then they thought something was wrong with them, so they went to the doctor. The doctor gave them hormones, and then those hormones then senses distress, right? Those hormones are brought to the surface, the body senses distress, and they start dropping eggs. But you can still live a relatively, peaceful life for a short amount of time, dropping eggs, and you've seen it. We have it in our society, But girls nowadays, they're not doing the J juice, are dropping eggs sooner and sooner, like at 11 and 9 years old. They're able to get pregnant, and you're like, what the hell? And that's where a lot of the issues are coming from, is that, younger girls are maturing faster and they look like they're 30. But then they have parents who are like, okay, yeah, go ahead, wear booty shorts. Go, yeah, wear low cut tops and show your boobs and show your butt and go attract the predators. And it happens. You see it all over Facebook. Just look at your friends and their kids and the girls that, that are really preening themselves, wanting to be fertilized. And that's why you have to be very careful with your girls and with your guys if they're not doing J juice, is because they're going to send off signals before they're even ready to even deal with the signals that they're sending off. And that's where predators then are attracted. So you have to understand that reproduction will attract predators, and so is dying, which attracts predators. Okay? When you're not dying or reproducing, you're not attracting anything except your own energy and those that are looking to be balanced too. And then you'll be, just doing whatever you do, and you won't be sending off any kind of signals. You'll just be very, pleasant. But I want to tell you, breeding is the Loosh energy. Okay? How many problems stem from raising children? Yes, Tiffany, yeah. How many problems stem from somebody dying on this planet? They have to get their license taken away because they keep hitting people with their car because they can't see. I mean, the poor elderly. All right? And so this is why it's so important to understand that the kind of energy you give off, you may think, oh yeah, motherhood is so great. I guess it's a lot of work and it's a lot of energy you have to give to a child. And if you don't have enough energy even for yourself, how the heck are you going to give it to your child? And if, and that's why, it's kind of cool to see a little bit of overweight moms, because they have a lot more energy to give to their kid. And then maybe one day down the road, they'll be able to balance out their energy, so that way they can then be more balance for themselves and for the kid. But when you have a very skinny mom who has a lot of issues, you hope that she sticks around, for her kid. If she has a lot of issues, will she have enough to give to those children? And you hope they do. Okay? And sometimes, uh, modern medicine has to come in and help with the rearing of the children because a mother could not give enough to it, or that she would need help from her community. Okay? So motherhood is not exactly the joyous thing people think it is. It does come from Loosh energy. Yes, it's hard work. It really is. You have to really know how to balance out your energy and their energy and be able to guide them. And it's a difficult thing. Not that it can't be done, but if you're not doing J juice, then you are steadily being depleted. And I've seen it. I've seen parents that have given so much to their adult kids as well as their minor kids, and they will keep doing it. And then you see the mother just wasting away, and their kid is like, and that's the thing, is you have to understand that every time you give your energy away to somebody, you look at the two people. One is the parasite, one's the host. You see the energy being taken away from that host, and the energy is going to that child. That child's becoming bigger or badder or whatever. So if you're going to have a kid, you better be able to replace the energy that kid is taking from you. And then adult children that keep taking from their parents, well, that's kind of our society, right? There must be a balance when it comes to adult children and parents. And some go overboard and completely extricate themselves. And whatever. And the others will give so much where they lose themselves. But then they expect to die. So they don't care. They'll give everything to their kid, and they'll die, and they'll sacrifice themselves for their child. And then that's looked up, that is revered in our society, is to basically give your heart, soul, your body, mind, and spirit to your kid. Well, aren't you important, mom and dad? What's wrong with you living and having your money? Why would you give it all to your child? Your child has the ability to make their own money, make better choices. But we raise kids who have issues, who become problems as adults, that will try to parasite off of people around them. And so you have to understand that that's the world that we live in, and it doesn't have to be that way. But when you're breeding, you're dying and reproducing, that Loosh energy is out there. And that's why it's very, very important to know this, and balance out your own body, mind, and spirit, and then also understand that your kids are sending signals to predators. You have to watch that. All right. You guys have an amazing day. Hey, Tiffany. Hey, John. Hey, everybody. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye.